Welcome to the Intentionists podcast, where we explore the interplay between intuition, spiritual health, and everything in between. I'm your host, Aimee Schreiber.
And I'm Hilary Zwallen. Our intention is to create a dialogue that inspires you to consciously forge your path with curiosity and compassion for life and its mysteries. Hello, fellow Intentionists. We are back this week to finish off our 4-part series of living in alignment with the seasons. And this one is spring, because spring is upon us. So if you are just joining us for the first time and this interests you, take a look through our archives, because we have released 3 other episodes that correspond to summer, fall, and winter. So today we're going to talk about how to align with spring energy so you can make the most of this fertile and exciting 3-month period before the summer solstice.
Yes.
We're going to talk about practical applications, talk a little magic and archetype, which we love always. And we're going to get into some ancient sacred sites that were designed for these special cosmic days of the solstice and equinox. And we also get into Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, and the mythology, of course. So just hang with us all the way through.
Also, a reminder, we have a monthly newsletter now. So if you aren't driving right now, take a minute and head to our website, Intentionists.com with an S, and sign up for it. We do a gratitude giveaway every month for one of our subscribers, and it's a good way to connect with us and keep up with the work that we are putting out. And we promise we will not spam you.
That's right.
So, Hilary, before we dive into the spring, I just wanted to tell you this really exciting thing that happened to me today. It was probably the most exciting thing I've seen in a while.
Really?
So I went down. There's a lake in front of the Capitol building where I live in Olympia. And I was sitting on a bench with my husband, and we're just like sipping some tea and looking at the lake. And all of a sudden I hear this singing going on, really loud singing from a distance. And I'm listening, and then I hear it's When You Wish Upon a Star. And I look down and I see this old woman walking like with her little cane, and she's just singing at the top of her lungs. And she gets closer, and she was like, she had headphones in, and she was just like singing as loud as possible. Like she was just bursting with the most joyful happiness. Like I want to aspire to be that woman and like not care what other people think about me. And yeah, it really made me feel happy.
Okay, I'm so glad you shared this, because I was just thinking at the very end of our notes today, was thinking about, we're going to talk about the spring, which is really the maiden archetype. And the challenge, we're going to skip all the way to the end really quick, but the challenge was going to be, to connect with your inner maiden. And I love that you found a woman who is in her crone phase, and her wise crone phase, who was totally connected to her inner springtime, right?
Yes.
Just that joyful, happy, fully expressed.
Yeah, she was the princess in the woods, like singing the songs.
I love it.
Yeah, and Danny like told her, we passed her when we were on our way back to the car, and he was like, "Thanks for your song, we loved it." And she was like, "Oh, I just love to sing. I just love it." And like you could tell, like when someone is like in their true authenticity, doing exactly what they love to do, there's just nothing more beautiful. It was like so amazing. And
I love that.
So, yeah, she is our spring icon.
Yes, our spring muse. She's the spring muse. I was just thinking, like, plus as you get older, I always go get my groceries at Sprouts here in town, and they play sometimes really ridiculous music, but like it's very like beboppy. And today it was like John Mellencamp songs from the 80s, and they play it at the level where it's just loud enough that like I am a dancer, right? Like I was a dancer for all these years, and I like unconsciously start moving every time I'm in the store. And so I was just thinking, when you were sharing that story, I was like, it's true. As you get older, I'm basically like dancing through the halls at Sprouts while I get my food. And I'm like, there's got to be someone looking at me going like, she's crazy, but
you're like the pig mom in Sing. Have you seen that? The kids movie Sing?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes. I'll be the pig mom for sure. All right. Let's talk about spring energy.
Yes. So Springtime, this is the exciting newness. The earth is new, and so are you. Spring, like fall, this is like this transitional liminal time between the fire of summer and the icy kind of heaviness of winter. So, just like fall, if you guys haven't heard our fall episode, you can listen to that when fall rolls around again. But it invites us to contemplate balance in our lives. And we're just emerging, we're just barely emerging from the dark of winter, but we're not fully formed yet. So, the thing that we wanted to talk about today was kind of exploring our passions and this excitement gently and not becoming impatient with the growth process. And really just like celebrating the newness and any little bit of progress that you've made. I was thinking about how the way we look at new leaves and blossoms when they first come out after the cold winter, like you look at these things, you're like, oh, that's amazing. Like it's this tiny little bud. It's great. And
Mhm.
I think if we can make a conscious effort to see ourselves and other people in our lives in this way, like it's a good way to
Mhm.
honor kind of the moment of the year where all these we're just these little flower buds and we made it to this point and have everything we need to grow into something new and beautiful. And that's something to be celebrated.
I love that. And I like all the words for spring too: emerging, excitement, exploring, expressing, embodiment, expanding, excavation, enjoyment. That's a lot of
Yeah,
alliteration there, Amy.
I know it's all the E words.
All the E words for the equinox. So, fall and winter, as we know, it's all about gathering in and gathering your people close, having your blankets, your warm food, directing your energy inward, and it really begins to shift outward during the spring. So, these are some of the things that you hear: the spring cleaning, and it's kind of a way of making your mind ready for growth and exploring your creativity and really pushing your boundaries. So, as we talk about, right now, it's just all about the newness, just like the little baby animals that we see born in the spring. They are new, they're wobbly, they're still being nursed by their mother. So, this is a time to marvel in the newness, like to your point where you were talking about the new buds. And it's so true. I mean, my husband and I went on this hike last weekend in the hills of Livermore, and it was like electric green. I mean, it looked like Ireland. We couldn't, California normally has these golden hills where it's all kind
Mhm.
of like dead grass and stuff because it's hot. And it was just so beautiful. And there were all these baby cows, and, we saw these animals and the birds, and they were talking. It was just amazing. And I really was marveling at even just the bright electric clover, the color of that. But we're going to be projecting into the phase of high productivity, right? Because that newness only lasts for really like a week or two. And then pretty soon those buds are fully formed flowers. The plants have grown into, from what was just a little leaf is now a flowering plant.
Mhm.
And so this is a productive time, and one that we as a society are generally pretty comfortable with, right? So I was even noticing this week I deemed my week very successful because I like really accomplished a lot this week. I worked on my book. I did all these other meetings. I was just like hyper productive, which for me is kind of an annoying realization. Like as I was thinking, I was so productive. I'm so proud of myself. I'm so awesome. And then I was like, oh, I just recognized that ongoing battle of self-worth and productivity. I was like, I just fell into the trap, the system's trap,
Mhm.
that my worth is like totally caught up with how much I got done in a week, which it's a very capitalistic and patriarchal narrative that really doesn't serve me too much at my core.
Mhm.
However, getting stuff done can be good. So it's that striking the balance, right? Between, recognizing that being productive can be a really good thing, and just maybe not tying our identities up with it as much as I do. But this is a phase of the year that corresponds with that maiden energy. So with the moon cycles, it corresponds with the first quarter to the full moon phase. So when we have all this cosmic and seasonal energy, this is just that great time, as Nike would say, to just do it and move from kind of the dreaminess and conceptualizing to true productivity.
Yeah. Also, something to know about spring, like before, a lot of people like the whole concept of spring cleaning and shedding your winter coat. Like, I think that people feel so driven to do this because they need the space to do their work. You need to clear out whatever is old, like whatever is left over from the winter time,
Hmm.
in order to have just room for the full expression. And so I think that's where the first half of spring, you got to release and make room, like expel what you don't need so you can express what you need to express.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And that kind of goes with the shadow work, that healing some of the wounds of maidenhood. Sometimes this is a good time to actually revisit the wounds of maidenhood, to journal or create or do art. Or it can also be a time to just focus on the fun. So for me, this winter felt like the time that I mulched the soil and
Mhm.
turned my inner compost into the nutrients for what is happening now. And I really just want to focus on the fun.
Right.
When you get to the point where you're like, I've just been doing my personal work to the point
Mhm.
where it's just time to have some freaking fun, right? Let's lighten it up and go have fun. So
Yeah, that's super important point. And it is, everything's really exciting. Things get exciting, and it is the time where you should head toward what excites you in whatever way that that shows up. I mean, we're going to talk about this more later, but I think being open to like new things that you are drawn to and curious about, because like in order to grow, like check in with your passions and check in with what excites you. And it might be surprising things that maybe you haven't ever explored before.
yes. Shall we talk about the equinox?
Yes, tell me
Okay.
about it.
So there are some cosmic power days that we're into astrology, right? We like all that stuff.
Mhm.
So some of the cosmic power days, they're every month. You've got your new moons, your full moons, and your eclipses that happen a few times a year, whether it's lunar or solar. Solar's less frequent. Um, and then we have our equinoxes and our solstices. So they're energetic openings that happen during these sacred spaces of time that you can really amplify your desires and your intentions on those days through your meditation practice. And so this is a time when people have gathered historically, basically a lot of times pre-industrial revolution, because they didn't have electricity. And so we as a species were much more in tune with the natural circadian rhythms, because we had to be, because we had to either light a candle and burn wax
Mhm.
down in order to be up past dark, or we just responded more with the light and the dark because we didn't have technology and lights. So these dates were important to different various religions. They were important to different cultures throughout time, and they were important to farmers. So the vernal equinox is what's coming up, and that's spring northern hemisphere, and the autumnal equinox, which is the fall southern hemisphere. So these are two moments in the year where the sun is exactly above the equator, and a day and the night are of equal length. So the sun rises exactly in the east, travels through the sky for 12 hours, and then sets exactly in the west. And so the equinox means equal night, and that only happens twice a year.
Oh, I didn't
Yes.
know that.
There you go. And the biggest difference between the equinoxes and the solstice is that a solstice is the point during the Earth's orbit around the sun, at which the sun is at its greatest distance from the equator, right? So this is the shortest day of the year or the longest day of the year.
Mhm.
And while during an equinox, it's at the closest distance from the equator, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's midway. And this, again, this goes back to the maiden phase, the vibrant, fertile, optimistic, energetic. So I wanted to talk a little bit about sacred geometry and locations.
Yeah,
Shall I?
they are all over the world. Yeah, tell us about them.
So last spring, we went to Rome. We happened to be there during Holy Week. We didn't realize it. It just happened to be when our spring break was. We were like, it was so packed in Rome, and it was really cool because we were there with the Pope was at the Vatican, and they had all these beautiful choirs singing, and there was just all kinds of celebrations going on that are not typically going on. So my husband and I, basically our favorite place in Rome is the Pantheon. And if you haven't been there, it's so overwhelmingly amazing. It's so huge, and it's basically in its original form. I mean, you can walk in, and it has this incredible oculus where there's this open circle right in the center. And when you walk in, and being someone who is energetically sensitive, I mean, I was just overcome, and it's packed, right? Like it was packed with tourists, but you walk in and you can just feel that it is such a unique space, when you walk into these certain spaces and you're like, something is different about this. I mean, obviously something is different, but it's also, there was a quality in there that really felt special. So this is from history.com. I'll quote here. So Rome's iconic pantheon was designed to represent, if not actually function, as a giant sundial when Emperor Hadrian rebuilt the fire ravaged original edifice around 128 AD. They suggest that the structure was precisely oriented to allow the oculus, which provides the only light source in the building, to cast a single sunbeam that marked the daily arrival of midday and illuminated the doorway on special occasions, including the equinoxes. And then in the book, The Time of Antiquity, this scientist whose last name is Hannah drew a parallel between the pantheon and a particular type of early sundial, which consisted of a stone block carved into a hollow sphere with a hole in its upper surface. And he maintained that the visitors to the buildings could easily tell time by observing the position of the shaft of light from the oculus, which crosses above or below the entry at the room. So furthermore, he suggested the beam hovers directly above the door at the March and September equinoxes, both moments of ceremonial importance for ancient Rome, because it was then that emperors, many of whom cultivated an association with the Roman sun deity, was considered closest to the heavens and the gods. And in design terms, this conscious effort was made by the architect and the builders to make the sun do something special in the pantheon at the equinoxes. He thought that by demonstrating that the midday sun in April 21st spotlights anyone who stands in the open doorway of the pantheon, and kind of gives it this like a halo around their,
Oh.
yeah. So these scientists think that the emperor might have entered the pantheon at that very moment, the bright halo around him acting as a striking confirmation of his divine power
Oh, wow.
and
That's
the glory of
interesting.
Rome. Yes, right.
Whoa.
So I mean, really interesting. I mean, the Romans were so advanced in terms of their architecture and their engineering and their science. Some of the criticisms were that their worship of their gods and their government were so intertwined that it's hard to know what was actually a sacred ritual versus just a stately event,
Well, that's like most cultures, though, right? Like, I mean, before the separation of church and state, that's a really modern thing. Like, it seems like most of these places, the spiritual leaders were tightly
Intertwined.
intertwined. There you go, with the political leaders. But
That's right.
that's interesting that like that's kind of gross and manipulative, like that they were able to do all of this smart geometry so that to prove this emperor's holiness, but it's also
Right.
really cool.
Yes. And then there's also Stonehenge, which is the other one I always think about whenever I think of equinoxes, and I think of kind of special ceremonial situations happening across the world.
Uh-huh.
And so this is the second so this time of year is the second of the 4 sky points in the wheel of the year. And it's when the sun does this perfect balancing act in the heavens, as we discussed. And so this is in the northern hemisphere. This is really it's the technical beginning of spring, but it's
Mhm.
what brings us out of winter, right? So in rural Britain, it was a tradition to drink dandelion and burdock cordials at this time, as these herbs are to cleanse the blood and are a good tonic for the body after its winter hardships. And interestingly enough, I have to tell you, Aimee,
Mhm.
that I have a good friend who's an herbalist, and she has me drinking nettles, and I've been drinking nettles. And she told me to order burdock root. So I literally just ordered burdock root. I've never used it before. And I'm going to decoct it. She says you put it in a boiling water and you just boil it for a long time. And then you strain out the root and you drink it, whatever. So it's in my pantry from the same hall as my nettles, which
Interesting.
which are right up there with like the dandelion. I mean, nettles are about the same thing. So I'm feeling very unusually connected to this tradition right now, because I was thinking I just started my nettles like a week ago for more grounding and kind of, cleansing. And this really is a time physically to start thinking of, we've been having a lot of those heavy nourishing foods.
Mhm.
And now is the time I've noticed that I've really been wanting to juice a little bit more and drink a lot more tea. And I'm feeling my body preparing itself
Yeah,
for the spring.
kind of want to detox. Yeah, that's like very in line with the traditional Chinese medicine theories about this time and the Ayurvedic ones too. So we'll talk about that later, but that's cool. You have burdock root. Never heard of that.
I know. I hadn't either. She's the one that told me to go get it, which is why when I read that, I was like, are you kidding me? I'm just, who has burdock root in their pantry? I do. How
Also,
weird is that?
never heard
So
of the word decoct. Like, what does that mean?
I hadn't either until she said that. I think it's just
Like
I don't
steep?
know. It must be the opposite. Yes, it's basically steep it for long periods of time. She has me doing chaga, where she was saying you can reuse chaga Like if you buy the actual, instead of just buying little chaga powder that you drink and then it's gone, if you just buy the actual little mushrooms, you can boil them like up to 30
Oh,
times
wow.
and get the same, basically the same nutrients out of it for like, they last a really long time. A lot of times people will buy it and then they boil it and then throw it away.
Oh, got
So
it.
it's a very sustainable mushroom apparently. So
Interesting.
anyways,
So
I'm learning all these things from her. She's like she's my herbalist healer lady.
that's cool. We'll have to have her
Um,
on. We can all learn.
I know. We will for sure. So as the vernal equinox, heralds the arrival of spring, it's time of renewal in nature and the home. We talked about spring cleaning. Oh, the other thing I was going to say is this is a good time to really think about removing any old or negative energies that have accumulated over the dark, heavy winter months and prepare for the way of positive energy. So saging your house, Palo Santo, cleaning out the closets. I also feel this way in early January after the holidays, but I've been feeling it again. So with other key festivals of this year, there are both pagan and Christian associations with the spring equinox. To pagans, this time of the year, this is the time of the ancient Saxon goddess Ostara, who stands for new beginnings and fertility. Hi, Easter Bunny, we're looking at you. And it also sounds a lot like what the Christians call Easter.
Yes.
Ostara, #Easter, which we know is also the time of the resurrection and signifies life overcoming death, which is also the end of winter and early spring.
Right. Yeah. This is a super important time, I think, across the world. I think most cultures have a spring festival that is celebrating something or another. It's the new year in a lot of different cultures.
Well, and we just found out that it's the zodiac new year,
Yeah,
right? With Aries.
exactly. So we should
So
talk more about
interesting.
that. But first, do we want to like give a little spiel about who we are for people who are just joining us and are like, who are these people talking to us? Why are they talking to us?
Yes, yes. So I think we do take a little quick break to tell you guys about who we are. We were just thinking we're going to add this into the podcast because we've been doing 51 episodes and we're thinking, unless you go onto our website, you're really not going to know. So I'm Hilary Zwallen. I am a trained shamanic practitioner and energy healer. I'm a lover of the esoteric and the spirituality mysteries of the world. I'm also an entrepreneur. So I helped build an e-commerce company, a clothing company from my living room to 75 employees. And I had a successful exit with that company in 2016. So I am still in the struggle of separating my identity from what I do in the world. I'm working on several local entrepreneurial projects, and I'm continually trying to find the intersection of what this work that I do on the podcast and with healing and shamanism and working in patriarchal systems and what dismantling that looks like and incorporating that into what's next and kind of living in what I would consider to be kind of a quote unquote a man's world when we're talking about capitalism and entrepreneurship. So it's still a great area for me. I've been fortunate enough to find a lot of really amazing people in my community who have been both male and female, who have been really supportive and helpful with me on my journey. And I do also conduct local sound healings and occasionally work with one-on-one clients. So that is my 45-second spiel.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
And I'm Aimee Schreiber. I am an artist, writer, and a remote content marketer for a healthcare publisher. And I recently moved back to Olympia, Washington after living in Mexico and Spain for a year and a half with my husband and son. We went over there to learn Spanish and explore around. And I also became certified in yoga while I was there. So I really love to read and study the mystical traditions of yoga and kind of how they compare to the Western esoteric and magical traditions. I love anything about that stuff. In my artwork, I love to explore mythological symbolism and kind of present moment wonder. My hope with everything that I do is that it will inspire other people toward curiosity, mindfulness, and joy. And for those of you interested in wanting to reach out or collaborate with either one of us, schedule a session, consult, artwork, whatever, you can email us at intentionists@gmail.com. And that's intentionists with an S. And then my personal website is namastemi.com. Aimee spelled Aimee.
Yes. And I'm specifically looking to work with people who are getting started in businesses or working in businesses and want to take a more energetic spiritual approach. So that's kind of where I feel like my wheelhouse is in terms of working with people one on one.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there.
Yes.
Back to global spring equinox traditions.
Yeah.
So, Aimee, take us in.
Right. So you mentioned some of the special places that were built. And we talked about in the fall episode the pyramids in Mexico, specifically Chichen Itza. That's another major like equinox power site. And what happens there is it looks like a snake of sunlight slithers up the stairs of the pyramid.
So
So
cool.
that's another site. And there's also the Thai New Year. We were talking about New Year, and that's a water festival, and it's called the Songkran. I'm probably saying that way wrong, but also the Hindu festival of colors, Holi or Holi. How do you say that word? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know.
That also goes on this time of year. And I looked at egg symbology because it's such a symbol for this time of year. And around the world, it seems to be pretty across the board. It's this symbol of rebirth and emergence. So for the Zoroastrian New Year, which is the Persian New Year, they decorate eggs for that, and that goes on the spring equinox. And then there are groups of Christians who roll eggs down the hill, and that symbolizes the stone rolling away from Christ's tomb. And like you said, with the European pagans, with Ostara, this is a fertility festival. That's where dyeing eggs, that's one place that dyeing eggs took place, and they dye them red to symbolize blood and fertility. Also, with red eggs, those are given to celebrate children's birth in China. And the other egg thing is in the Hindu mythology, like the whole universe arose from this cosmic egg. So eggs are very springy.
The universal symbol.
Yeah. So, I think the reason that besides the obvious, like, yes, babies and humans, like, we all rise from eggs, but eggs are a symbol of potential. They're just brimming with this potential. And like a seed, they have all the raw material they need to transform into something amazing that you wouldn't really be able to guess at, like, just by looking at the egg. And so spring it's this time of hope where we don't really need to know exactly what the full expression of our work and our growth for the year will look like. We just know it is there, and we can feel the inspiration and enthusiasm and transformation bubbling up, and that's like, it's the time of year to honor that.
You were talking about this idea of brimming with potential. And I was sitting on my porch today and I was working on my book, and I had been inside. I've kind of created this little nook inside my house next to the fireplace where I have a little meditation pillow where I do my breathing in the morning. And then I will go and sit by the fireplace and write. And it's been this great spot for me. It's felt so cozy and so homey. And today it was just so sunny and beautiful. It's still kind of chilly here, but I mean, it's relative. Like, we're in California, so it's like, 55. I'm like, it's cold, but everywhere else, it's like we're buried under snow. We're really lightweights over here in California. So I went out on my porch and the sun was down on my back, and it just brought in this completely different energy. And I was feeling so excited about traveling. And as much as I love it when when the seasons change and we switch into the time where we can kind of nestle in and settle in and think about what happened that year, I get so excited in the spring and all the possibilities. And I was thinking about the trips that we have planned, and I was thinking about how my children are growing, and it was just all of this idea of like concept of brimming with potential, And I even noticed that in the chapter that I was writing, I took a completely different angle than what I've been doing the last couple of days, which I've been happy with, but it was just a cool way of like changing the space and feeling like I was really tapping into the spring energy with the sun on my back, and I was sitting around my plants and things are starting to bloom, and it's just, I love it.
That's beautiful.
Just wanted to add that little thing.
Yeah. So much of like the practices that we do during springtime, like, they feel very natural. Like, people just naturally do this stuff. This is like innate connection with the spring energy.
Yes.
Let's go into like some specific practices like that they talk about in different traditions.
Yes. Spring season magic with a K.
Yeah, magic with a K. So any practice that is balancing, that honors the light and dark, that's what's going on with magical practices at this time of year. And so there's a practice I wanted to talk about called solar breathing and lunar breathing. And I mean there's variations of this practice in a lot of different traditions, but the book that I was just reading was is called High Magic by Damien Eccles. Do you know who this man is?
No.
He spent almost 20 years on death row for a crime he didn't commit. And then he was
Wow.
released off from prison, and he credits like his release to he just sat in prison for 20 years doing magic, basically trying to be released.
Wow.
So he has a book. There's a documentary about it too, which I don't remember what it's called. But anyway, super interesting story. The book is really interesting. But he talks about
So High Magic. The book is called High
yeah, so
Magic.
he talks about spending he says start with just 5 minutes inhaling the sun. It's the fourfold breath. So you inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, and then hold it out for 4 counts. But basically you're inhaling the energy of the sun, and then you like feel the sun trickle throughout all your cells for the holding counts, and then you exhale the sun energy and kind of see it surround your body like in an egg shape, like fill up your aura basically. So back to the egg, that's why
Mm,
it made me think of this, because it's a balancing thing, and then it's also like you're seeing a glowing egg around yourself. And
I love that.
yeah, and then you can do that with the sun in the morning, and then you do the same thing with the moon in the evening before bed. And I've
Mm.
started doing this for the last week or so, and it's been really interesting. I do the sun one in the morning while I'm walking. Sometimes the sun is out and it feels easier to do, but it's cloudy here in Washington, so you kind of have to use your
Mm,
imagination. But
yes.
yeah, it has been really interesting. It's kind of difficult to keep the counting straight and do all the visualizing, but yeah, it's been a really I would encourage people to try this or some form of this. This is I mean, any type of breath work that you do, it just always it feels so good.
I wanted to point out too, I've been practicing Kundalini yoga now for a couple of
Mhm.
months, mostly in the mornings. I usually get in anywhere between 3 and 20 minute sessions. And then I try to do like 90 minutes once a week whenever I can,
Mhm.
when it makes sense. But I have found that they do a lot of the breath of fire, which is something that was taught as well in my shamanic training. And there really is something about oxygenating your blood in this particular way. It's more of an inner warmth
Mhm.
versus, I mean, cardiovascular, running or doing whatever is great too, and I enjoy that occasionally, a couple like once or twice a week, getting your heart rate up in that way. But this way, you're just sitting there and you're just breathing, and you feel the heat starting internally, and it really does raise your mood. It really does shift your mood in a very short amount of time. And so there really is something about doing, to your point, the breath work. If you can just dedicate, and you can go on YouTube and find, search
Tons,
breath
yeah.
work, and you can find a ton of options there. And it really is something that for years I knew I needed. Then I would do it. I would have success, feel amazing. Then I would fall out of the habit. And this has really been the time of my life where I've settled into an actual practice.
Mm.
And it really does, life is still hard. It's not like all my problems are going away, but I find that I definitely like regardless of what some people might say that will happen if you do it, but I do feel like there is just a general sense of well-being that's a little bit more amplified, and I just look forward to it.
Mhm.
I find that when I'm doing it, I'm like, this is my time for me, and I do feel like it's a true ceremony that I'm stepping into. So,
Yeah,
highly
yeah,
recommend.
for sure. The other thing, like this time of year, we kind of want to start moving our bodies more. So I think yoga, trying to, if you don't have, I've never tried yoga, find a class or a YouTube video, because anything that where you're doing equal stretches like on both sides of the body, that is all very balancing. And hatha yoga, for people who like will see in your classes, some of them are called hatha, and the translation for that is in some translations, ha means sun and tha means moon. So it's like, it's all about just balancing the opposing forces. So yeah.
Let's talk about Ayurveda.
Yes. So for people who don't know, it is the sister science to yoga. So this is like all the health and eating practices. And it's basically a system based on three doshas, or these three components, these three elements. And the three elements are kapha, pitta, and vata. So the spring season under this system is the blend of the kapha and the pitta doshas. So kapha is like qualities of coolness, heaviness, and then the blend of the two, pitta, is the fiery one. So what you get in the spring is this cool, wet kind of, but softer instead of the hardness of winter. And it's slimy, it's mobile. There's also like more joy, more clarity. And then it's also associated with blue and green colors. And I'm getting this information from a book called Ayurveda by a Vasant lad for people who are curious. Yeah, so in the tridosha system, all things are made up by these elemental components. And so an Ayurvedic practitioner would say to balance kapha at the beginning of spring, like you want to balance what has accumulated over winter. So you can do this by eating lighter foods, like we were talking about earlier, less snacking, less oil. They talk about adding cooked greens. Like maybe you're not into the full, let's eat a salad because it's summertime yet, but like start adding more leaves to your food.
I've totally been doing this like intuitively. This is interesting. I've been buying a lot of beets and beet greens because I mean, and obviously this is the time of year where kale and cruciferous vegetables and all the you know, all those leafy rooted vegetables are growing.
They're so pretty.
In at least in California they are, right? And they do well in that early spring kind of chill. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of beet greens and beets and just those veggies that are not, it's not quite like, I mean, I know celery is kind of a big deal these days. Have you seen all the celery juice everywhere? Of course you have, right? Everyone's doing this like medical medium or whatever, miracle medium. I don't remember what it is. I haven't read the book, but I just see celery juice. I'm not totally like ready for all of that just yet, but I do feel like the leafy greens that are steamed are more exciting to me than the salads.
Yeah, I did just like a week ago. I've been eating oatmeal every day for breakfast for like all winter. And then I just barely started like having a morning smoothie instead. And I'm like, oh, I think it's time. I still don't like it really cold because I hate cold things, but it's been a nice change. It feels good. Yeah. The other thing that they suggested is like citrus fruits, like get your lemon water going. Maybe if you've had a lot of meat over the winter, maybe try to cut down on that and see how you feel. And I mean, I like I said, I think this is stuff that people just kind of naturally do at this time of year because it feels normal in many ways.
Yes.
And in the Chinese medicine system, I read from a website called 5-Element Healing that the spring is associated with the wood element, and the organs associated are liver and gallbladder. And so like you were saying, all these liver cleansers, like the beet greens and the nettles and stuff, this is all very much in line with the traditional Chinese medicine. And I really like from this website what they said about the qualities of wood, this element. I'm just going to quote. It says, the power of wood is gentle, persistent, and filled with creative potential. It has the power of both being and becoming, of being true to your own nature and becoming more yourself by clearly expressing your inner needs and desires. So I felt like that really summed up a lot of like the spirit of what we were talking about.
Yes. Okay, so journal contemplation.
Yes.
We've got some assignments.
Yes.
Or some challenges, I like to say, because this isn't real homework. This is elective homework. But so for your journal, here's some prompts. What excites and energizes me? How can I honor my talents and nourish this energy? What am I curious about? And remember, a tiny bud of curiosity can flower in beautiful and surprising ways.
Yes.
So Ponder that.
The other thing that you're probably already doing in one form or another is declutter and organize a room, maybe your bedroom. Any room that you choose, as you do this, you can imagine the mental debris of unhelpful patterns and old limiting beliefs falling away. This is what I've kind of tried to do as I clean things to make it more fun. I mean, not more fun, just more of like so I feel like it's more worthwhile to my spiritual growth is
Mm-hmm.
like turn it into this meditation and visualization of like the clearing. Um,
I love that, by the
mhm.
way, Amy. I love that you bring that up because I hate
Me too.
cleaning. Like, I hate it so bad. I hate it. And I'm not good at it. I get distracted and oh my gosh. But there is when you're like, oh, I feel like for me, I have to feel like I'm moving towards something
Right.
always, right?
Uh-huh.
For better or worse. And so I love that you bring that up to imagine the mental debris of these unhealthy patterns falling away
Yeah,
and being like, as I'm folding my clothes and I'm going through my
totally.
closet,
Yeah,
like I'm releasing
it's a
myself
more like
from
it's a
myself.
more hopeful like mindset than because I feel like
Yes.
it's for me it's so easy to get stuck in like this is just going to be dirty in like 5 minutes from now, and so why? This is just wasting my time.
Yes.
I want to do other things. So if you have that problem,
Yes.
listeners,
Or you have or you're living with
exactly,
children and you know you're going to spend 45 minutes cleaning up the house in the morning when they leave for school and then they're going to come home and in 2 minutes it's going to just be
right.
a wrecking
I heard
zone.
someone say that
Yes.
cleaning your house while having kids is like brushing your teeth while you're eating an Oreo. Have you heard that?
That's a really,
It's
yeah.
true.
That's
It's just
true.
true.
Yes.
But
That's just a
anyways, yes,
truth.
turn it into your little mental meditation. And the last one, or not the last one, our next one is create a spring altar for yourself in your newly cleaned space. Maybe set up a little surface for yourself and put whatever meaningful objects that excite and inspire you, that like remind you to honor nature and honor yourself as a part of nature. So that's another thing that you can do to keep the springy energy at the front of your mind.
I love that. And just to remember to get out and have freaking fun. Like, just go have fun. It's light, it's bright, it's the season of possibility. Soak it up. The one thing I will say, and I love all the magic stuff, but sometimes I'm not the best details person. And so there are times when creating an altar or being very specific about lining up with a moon cycle or a planetary transit or whatever is really helpful to me. And then there's also times when it's just like really
Let
stressful
it
to
go.
me
Yeah.
and it like adds stress. So just remember, these are all recommendations for you, whatever you're feeling called to do. If you've never created an altar, it's a really fun thing to try. And so maybe you just try that this month and you think, what are all the little, you can kind of open a dialogue with the animals and the plants in your area. And you think, help me find a rock or a tree or a stick or something, or some flowers, or decorate it with whatever, ancestors or whatever is meaningful to you, pictures you've drawn, write your intentions out, light a candle. It's a very beautiful practice.
Yeah.
So
I love that you bring that up because like, as long as it doesn't feel like you're just like adding this other thing to do that stresses you out, only do these things if it's not stressing you out. And in the book that I was talking about earlier, the High Magic book, he said that with all of the practices, he's like, only do these things as long as it feels enjoyable. Like it should feel enjoyable. And if it doesn't, like, you don't need to be doing it, like find something that does feel enjoyable, that does honor yourself and your own wants and desires and time. Like this is not a one size fits all formula for things.
Yes. And take a moment and look back. Remember, you've been doing the work all year, and now is the newness. So this is what we have to look forward to. This is what Aries is all about. And we'll be doing an Aries episode coming up in the next few weeks. So,
yes.
So with that, we bid you adieu until next time.
Happy spring equinox today. And we will talk to you next week. Thanks for listening. Before we part, we'd like to say thanks for listening, and we hope you'll connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We would love to hear from you and appreciate all feedback, shares, and likes.
To learn more and subscribe to our newsletter, visit Intentionists.com. And no matter where you are or what you're creating, we send you love and invite you to breathe and begin.
See you next week.